the religion clauses of the First Amendment remain intact and continue to safeguard our religious liberty. So the concept of religious freedom in America has a rich history, but the essential ingredients of this concept are definitely not new. They are inspired in large part from the political writings of the British philosopher John Locke and the French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and they strongly resonate with the Islamic concept of religious freedom. In fact, Islam advanced the concept of religious freedom over 1,000 years before America was founded. So let me now turn to the Islamic concept of religious freedom. The starting point for this analysis must begin with the verse that I recited at the beginning of my speech, La ikraha fi din, qad tabayyana rushdu min al-ghayy. There should be no compulsion in religion. Surely the right way has become distinct from error. Among all other revealed texts, only the Quran stresses religious freedom in such unambiguous and clear terms. In Islam, compulsion is incompatible with religion. Faith is an individual concern and commitment. It is a voluntary act born out of conviction and freedom. Believing Muslims should not compel another to believe in Islam because they've earned no such right. All people must be permitted to find the truth through their own path. And elsewhere in the Quran, in chapter 10, verse 100, we read, and I quote, "And if your Lord had enforced his will, surely all who are on the earth would have believed together. Will you then force men to become believers?" End quote. This verse demonstrates that religious freedom is part of Allah's design in Islam. Indeed, Allah admonishes Muslims not to use force in matters of faith. Forced faith is no faith at all. Finally, an entire chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Kafirun, specifies the prescribed conduct of Muslims with non-believers. Allah demands that believers declare emphatically that they will not force another to believe. Lakum dinakum waliyadin. For you, your religion. For me, my religion. Again, this is a strong and unambiguous proof of religious tolerance in Islam. But my friends, these Quranic verses are not just theoretical pronouncements. They form the basis of true Islamic governance and protection of religious freedom. Indeed, the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, cherished these Quranic pronouncements and practically enforced them throughout his life. He actively promoted peace, tolerance, and compassion for all non-Muslim minorities living in Arabia. He just didn't demand religious tolerance. His sunnah, his example, was to provide legal and constitutional protections for religious minorities. And for purposes of this speech, I choose two examples, two historic documents that he authored that are here for all of us to remember. The first document is the Charter of Medina. This was written in 622 AD. It was a formal agreement, constitution, between the Prophet of Islam and all of the significant tribes and families of Medina, including the Muslims, the Jews, and the non-Muslim Arabs. Many scholars refer to this document as the first ever written constitution of a nation state in history. Many scholars say that this document, which predates the Magna Carta by 6 centuries, is unprecedented in scope. It was executed and implemented for 10 years and applied to 10,000 citizens in Medina at the time. The Prophet ﷺ himself commissioned a census, the first ever census, and he discovered that 45% of all citizens in Medina consisted of Arabs. 40% consisted of Jews. Only 15% of the total population in Medina at the time consisted of Muslims. In other words, the Prophet wrote the Charter of Medina as a minority sovereign. His express goal was to govern a multi-religious, pluralistic society. This charter consists of 47 clauses, which set forth the formation of a sovereign nation-state with a common citizenship for all communities. And it provides fundamental human rights protections, such as the freedom of conscience, the freedom of religion, equality for all, and cooperation. If you pick it up, and review clause 25 that specifically deals with religious freedom for Jews and Arabs at the time. So in short, the Charter of Medina was the first document in history to establish religious freedom as a fundamental constitutional right. But the Prophet ﷺ's commitment to religious freedom did not just stop with the Charter of Medina. With Islam's rising influence in Arabia by 628 AD, Jewish and Christian tribes endured severe struggles with certain Muslim forces. And Holy Prophet ﷺ penned a series of letters to various kings in the Arab Peninsula, declaring his intention for peace and cooperation. And one of those letters is a letter written to the monks of the St. Catherine Monastery in Mount Sinai. It's known today as the Charter of Privileges, and I'll read a portion of it for you right now. And I quote, "This is a message from Muhammad, son of Abdullah, as a covenant to those who adopt Christianity near and far. We are with them. Verily I, my servants, my helpers, and my followers defend them, because Christians are my citizens. And by Allah, I hold out against anything that displeases them. No compulsion is to be on them. Neither are their judges to be removed from their jobs, nor their monks from their monasteries. No one is to destroy a house of their religion, to damage it, or to carry anything from it to Muslim homes. Should anyone take any of these, he would spoil God's covenant and disobey his prophet. Verily, they are my allies and have my secure charter against all that they hate. No one is to force them to travel. No one is to force them to fight. The Muslims are to fight for them. Their churches are to be respected. And no one of my ummah is to disobey this letter and this covenant until the last day."
Nara Takbir! Islam! Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa! Hazrat Khatamul Anbiya! Rahmatul lil Alameen! Nara Takbir!
Western Islamic scholar Marmaduke Pickthall, he comments on this letter, and I quote, "The charter which Muhammad ﷺ granted to the Christian monks of Sinai is a living document. If you read it, you will see that it breeds not only goodwill, but actual love. He gave to the Jews of Medina precisely the same treatment as he did to the Muslims. He never was aggressive against any man or class of men. The story of his reception of Christian and Zoroastrian visitors is on record. There is not a trace of religious intolerance in any of this," end quote. I did some research and I discovered that the St. Catherine Monastery at Mount Sinai, which is now in present-day Egypt, has been designated by the UN as a World Heritage Site and is considered to be the oldest active Christian monastery in the world. In fact, the official website of this monastery mentions this letter and proudly commemorates it and features it prominently on its website. The original version of this letter is in the Royal Treasury in Constantinople in Turkey, and a certified copy of this letter is on its website. This discovery was also mentioned by our beloved fourth Khalifa as well in talking about the letter. And to this date, the St. Catherine monks continue to practice their faith without restriction, based on the protections granted to them 1400 years ago. And the entire world stands as a witness to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's sublime act of religious tolerance. My dear friends, America and Islam share a remarkably similar approach to religious freedom. It is an approach grounded in absolute freedom of conscience and belief, the free exercise of religion for all people, freedom from state control of religion, and mutual respect, cooperation, and peace. Let me now turn briefly to the third part of my speech, and that is the state of the Muslim world. It is a tragic irony that much of the Islamic world has lost sight of Islam's true and essential teachings concerning religious freedom. Countries such as Indonesia, Egypt, and Pakistan currently have laws on their books that suffocate the rights of religious minorities. A dramatic example of this is one that hits very close to our homes and our hearts. 6 weeks ago in Lahore, the world witnessed a brutal crime against humanity.